You have been performing calm your entire life. Not feeling it, performing it. There is a difference, and that difference is the fracture line running through every decision you have made under pressure. When someone challenged you in a meeting, you smiled and said nothing, not because you had mastered the moment, but because you had learned to freeze it. When someone you trusted betrayed you, you buried the fracture under marble-smooth composure, and you called that strength. It was not strength, it was concealment without architecture. A wall with no foundation. The modern world has confused suppression with sovereignty. It has sold you the mask and called it the mind. You bought it, most people do. The Stoics did not teach numbness. That is the most dangerous misreading of their philosophy, and it is everywhere now. Marcus Aurelius did not sit on the throne of Rome feeling nothing. He sat there feeling the full weight of empire, the grief of lost children, the slow burn of betrayal from men he had elevated. He recorded every fracture in private. He forged every fracture into gold. What the court saw was marble. What the pages of his private mind revealed was fire that had been given direction. That is the architecture the modern imitator misses entirely. The warrior who feels nothing on the battlefield is not fearless, he is broken. Broken iron does not hold an edge. The warrior who feels the cold feels the fear, feels the weight of what is at stake, and moves anyway. That is the blade that cuts clean. Sensation is not the enemy of discipline. Suppression of sensation without processing it is the enemy. One produces sovereignty. The other produces a slow internal collapse dressed in composure. The ancient mirror shows you this clearly. The Stoic did not amputate emotion. He became its sovereign. Consider what happens structurally when you suppress without processing. The fracture does not disappear. Marble under unaddressed pressure does not stay smooth, it shatters. The crack travels inward, invisible to everyone including you, until the moment of maximum exposure when it splits open at exactly the wrong time. You have seen this, you may have lived this. The person who held everything together for months and then collapsed over something small. The silence that became an explosion. The composed professional who made one catastrophic decision under pressure because the weight of everything unfelt finally found a direction. That is not a character flaw, that is physics applied to the human interior. Kintsugi teaches something architecture confirms: the fracture is not the failure. The failure is leaving the fracture unfilled, unexamined, unintegrated. Gold poured into the crack does not hide the break. It transforms the break into the most structurally significant line in the entire piece. The place that was shattered becomes the place that holds. This is the paradox that most will never reach because they stop at the surface. They learn the silence, they practice the stillness. They wear the mask with increasing skill, and underneath the fractures multiply in the dark, unfilled, ungolded waiting. The most dangerous mind in the room is not the one that feels nothing. It is the one that feels everything, and has built an interior architecture so precise, so deliberately forged, that nothing reaches the surface until the sovereign inside chooses to release it. Feeling everything is not the weakness, it is the raw material. What you do with that material in the silence between sensation and expression, that is where the real work lives. That is where the disciplined diverge from the weak, not in what they feel. In what they have built to hold it. The mask is not the destination. The mask is the last wall of a fortress that had to be constructed from the inside out. Stone by stone, fracture by fracture, gold by gold, Part 2 begins where the philosophy ends and the method begins. The method does not begin with the face. It begins with the interior. You cannot build a wall that holds if you have never mapped what it is supposed to contain. This is where most fail. They reach for the stillness before they have done the excavation. They practice the expression without forging the structure beneath it. The result is performance, not sovereignty, and performance under sufficient pressure always breaks. What follows is not a list of tips, it is a protocol. The distinction matters. Tips are optional. A protocol is a system you commit to completely or abandon entirely. There is no partial architecture. A wall built halfway is not a shorter wall, it is a ruin. First, the inventory of fractures. Before you can fill a crack with gold, you must locate it precisely. This is the work the sovereign does in private that the weak refuse entirely. Each evening sit in silence, not meditation as the modern world has softened it into, but deliberate interior audit. Name what moved you that day. Name what threatened to surface. Name what you suppressed without processing. The Stoic did not avoid this accounting. He made it the foundation of every journal entry, every private reckoning. You are not cataloging weakness. You are mapping the architecture of your interior, so you know exactly where the fractures run. Exactly where the gold must go. The warrior who knows the weaknesses in his own armor is infinitely more dangerous than the one who pretends he has none. Second, the pause architecture between sensation and expression. There is a gap. In the weak, that gap is a fraction of a second. Sensation arrives, and expression follows immediately, unfiltered, unforged. In the disciplined, that gap is a constructed space. A deliberate chamber of silence where the raw material of feeling is held, assessed, and released only on sovereign terms. Build this chamber consciously. When something strikes you, anger, grief, the cold blade of betrayal, you do not suppress it and you do not release it. You hold it in the chamber, you let it burn without letting it speak. You ask, what does this sensation reveal about what is at stake? What does releasing it now cost me? What does holding it now build? The philosopher who masters this gap does not appear cold, he appears immovable. There is a difference, and others feel it without being able to name it. The asymmetric outcome is this. You begin to occupy rooms differently, not because you have changed your expression, but because you have changed what lives behind it. Third, the controlled release. Sovereignty is not permanent silence. Permanent silence is another form of suppression, and suppression without release is a sealed furnace. It does not hold forever. The disciplined know that the gold must occasionally be shown, not to expose the fracture, but to demonstrate that the fracture has been filled, that the break has become the strongest line. Controlled release means choosing when, where, and to whom you allow the interior to surface. Not in reaction, not under pressure, on your terms, in your timing, at the moment of maximum strategic clarity. The sovereign who never speaks is not powerful, he is absent. The sovereign who speaks only when the moment demands it. Who releases only what serves the architecture. Who shows the gold without revealing the crack, that is the blade that holds its edge across decades. The asymmetric outcome is this: when you finally speak, the room stops. You are not broken. You are unfinished. There is a precise and critical difference between those two states. Broken marble is rubble. Unfinished marble is a block that has not yet met the chisel with enough patience, enough deliberate force, enough willingness to let the unnecessary fall away. The fractures you carry are not evidence of damage beyond repair. They are the lines waiting to be filled. The silence you have mistaken for emptiness is the space where the gold is supposed to go. The sovereign is not born. He is forged in private in silence. In the slow and unglamorous work of mapping every fracture, filling every crack, and building an interior architecture so precise that nothing reaches the surface until he decides it does. That is not a gift, that is construction. And construction requires that you begin, not when you are ready. Not when the conditions are perfect, but now in the silence after this ends. In the stillness before the next demand arrives. The mask is not the lie. The mask is the last wall of something real. When the interior has been forged, when the fractures have been found, filled, and integrated, the stillness you project is no longer performance. It is architecture made visible. The face becomes the marble surface of a structure that has been built to hold. And what it holds is everything. The fire, the grief, the cold clarity of knowing exactly what you feel and choosing exactly what you show. That is the paradox fully realized. You feel everything. You show only what the moment demands. And the distance between those two realities is not emptiness. It is the most disciplined space a human mind can construct. Most will read this and return to the surface. They will practice the stillness without doing the excavation. They will wear the silence without building the architecture beneath it. They will perform the mask and wonder why it keeps cracking. You now know why. The question is whether you will do the work that cannot be seen, the private accounting. The pause architecture. The controlled release, or whether you will settle for the performance and call it mastery. The sovereign does not settle. The sovereign builds. Only those who refuse comfort will understand what comes next. Subscribe to Marble and Mind.